means a return to a primitive uh, Middle Ages or Stone Age society without technology and without atheism, without the secular society, without knowledge and science, without machines and so
every
on.
week.
And in this poverty, they imagine that people will be happier because social connections will be more important and people will be more connected to each other through Islam and yeah, live short but happy lives, and people will be happier even though that they are starving and diseased and stupid and uneducated. And
So, how big is this anarcho primitivist community?
I would say it's around 10 to 15%. And I base that on the fact that there are two parties. There are two parties that are far left. It is the left party, the former Communist Party, and the Environmentalist
By
Party.
the way,
Uh,
sir,
the,
your nation is so incredibly held as a globalist hub that you're currently exporting Greta Thunberg, emotional blackmail, and psychological terrorism on the populations of the world over climate change, and only to Western populations.
well, people hate Greta.
I know, but your nation is exporting her.
It's more like the Social Democratic Party. Well,
Yeah, well,
the Social Democratic Party is the Social Democratic Party has basically two phases. Uh, they can be a political party when it
by the way,
suits them.
just out of
Um,
curiosity, are there any political parties in Sweden that are against climate taxes, carbon taxes, petrol taxes?
yeah, I think lots of our I think the entire bourgeoisie right wing used to be against carbon taxes. They called carbon taxes just to be a hidden form of socialism that wouldn't benefit the environment in any shape or way. Just an excuse to penalize and suck money out of capitalism. Uh, well, the center right used to basically argue that environmentalism is just socialism. It's not about the environment. It's not about reducing carbon dioxide. It is only about reducing productivity. The left basically wants to reduce productivity. They want us to be poorer. They want us to have less technological advantage because then they think that social equality will increase. And it's basically just a fantasy about using farms and eco farms as a new communism, as a new planned economy. So everything on the Swedish environmentalist left is just it's just planned economy, just planned economy, and they are using the environment as a new excuse, and that is what
That's an
the center
interesting
right is
take.
saying. That's basically what the entire center right is saying. There's very little. There's lots of interest in the environment and protecting environment, but usually like the right want to save animals more often. Like they think like, oh, animals plant trees. They think more like
Yeah, well, I
physical.
seriously hope that no political party in Sweden has leverage of the sort that is give us taxes to pay the weather, to change the weather.
Oh yeah, sure. That's the environmental party, the Green Party.
And how strong they're
History.
in parliament.
Um, The I'm going to I will have to check, but every year they usually have around less than slightly less more than they have around 10 or 10-18% every year, and the uh,
Jesus Christ! And Greta's got like
and the
11%
Communist Party have
every.
like between 9 and 15, but right now they have really high scores. I have to open internet.
So Sweden is going to have to pay a third more taxes to the EU after we depart. How is the media playing this?
Um, I don't have the numbers of the approval poll rating, but essentially the communists have really high score right now. But the Greens, I don't know what their scores are, so you should have given me a warning about
Is
if you
there
ask
any
me for
political
statistics.
party in Sweden that openly advocates for Swexit?
Yes, but they're not currently doing seats.
They're not currently what?
They are not having seats.
That's terrible.
No, there's no anti-EU Brexit, but there's just insinuations. They just insinuations. The Sweden Democrats are currently they say that they are pro-Brexit. They basically try to sabotage us, the EU, from within. The Sweden Democrats, that are the only nationalists that have any power, they are civic nationalists, unfortunately, and they want us to sit in the EU so that they can join other nationalistic and anti-migration factions in Europe. And yeah, well, and I don't think that you can control
But it's an
the
interesting
EU.
overall topic, yes. Rising nationalist factions.
It's basically they want to use the European Union as a platform for conservative nationalism. I have to describe Sweden Democrats for people who don't understand what are these. Sweden
By the
Democrats
way,
are
nothing will change until France gets rid of Macron. When it comes to European bloc,
you're
degeneration
completely
times.
wrong.
Macron has to go, mofo. He has half of the army on the streets of Paris every single week. That costs a lot of money, enough to bankrupt a state. The man is doing a
Yeah, but
very poor job.
France doesn't matter. France never matters.
France is the second biggest economy, bar Britain and Germany, after we leave.
They have no real economy. The French economy is always garbage, and it's fluid. It is just rebels and uprisings, decades after decades. They are always go in debt. They never industrialize. They never invent the latest technology. They are behind in computer technology, in industrialization, and in everything. They cannot live up to any modern standards in hygiene. Their food is hygienic. They still have a small scale primitive farms, and the only justification for their primitive economy is their luxury products and their fanciful streets.
So let me get this
They are
straight.
nothing.
All stems from the fact that the French food is dysgenic.
Yes, well, it's dysgenic, and it's not hygienic. It's not hygienic, and it's dysgenic because it is promoting the weakest members of the society, because everyone gets diseases. Everyone gets diseases, and not everyone can buy this luxury food, and it promotes outdated farming techniques and so on. But no, because of the French are complained decades ago about capitalism. They're still in shock over capitalism. Oh, free market capitalism is invading France and it's changing things, and they haven't gotten over it. Like, okay, most socialist countries in Europe, developed socialist have they have accepted some sort of modern compromised capitalism, some sort of regularly managed capitalism, and some sort of compromise. But the French really haven't. The French doesn't accept any modern concept of rationality or efficiency. They are too far. They are a parasite of France. They are a parasite on France and a parasite on Europe. And the European Union is basically all about sending money to France and artificially stimulating their economy. So I think that politics is a reflection of this. If you can't stand on your leg as a country, then you can't have political power. It's the de facto power is going to sit in Germany. It's going to sit in Germany. Germany is the only efficient and industrious country in Europe when England is gone. I mean, there's no other way. And where the money is, where the money
If they
is,
both
that's
try to play hardball with us when it comes to trade talks, their economy will suffer. Also, Deutsche Bank is on the verge of extinction and liquidation. So, if
yeah,
they
but
don't get our trade deal, they don't get a lot of money that they actively need going into this new decade.
yeah, but here's the thing: economy matters. Okay, if you don't have
Economy
economy,
matters with massive, solid amounts of money that with which you plan the next 2.5 to 5
yeah,
years. Okay, that's what they're currently trying to do. The budget for the new decade at Davos. Okay,
yeah, but you don't have political capital if you don't have economic capital.
yeah, which is why they need 36 billion.
You cannot have, okay, political capital is human capital. It's social connections. It is human optimism. It is the people who are willing to work in your country, who are willing to buy and sell, and who are willing to make effort. If people believe in your ideology, political ideology, then they can innovate, they can come up with new technologies and innovate within that political system. So it's psychological capital, it's human capital, it's your access to people, your ownership
Also, the
of
euro is an
people.
unstable and shit currency, especially
Yeah,
for
yeah, but
Greece and
if we
Spain.
just look at it from a psychological, spiritual,
Virgil, if your country had the choice to keep your Swedish currency or to have the European currency, which would you choose presently, as things are presently with the EU?
oh, you mean the Swedish currency against the euro?
Yes.
Hmm. Well, I think that the country doesn't care because the Swedish mentality is that by any other name, it's the same thing. We're going to do basically, if we are using the euro, we are going to manipulate the euro in every shape or way that we can to get what we want. That is the Swedish mentality. The Swedish mentality is that if we join a group, if we join any other group or international alliance, we're going to stay the same and we're going to um, do what suits us, and we are going to manipulate whatever political situation there is. It doesn't matter if we will be pro-Russian communists or American capitalists or Europeans. We will superficially adopt and push for whatever is in our best interest. And we have proven that we are very good at manipulating other countries and dealing with other countries to get what we want. So I think that it doesn't really matter to us because if we join the EU, if we stay in the EU, we will do so only to try to exploit the EU. And if we don't feel that we can exploit the EU, we will never join. We will never stay in the EU. This whole Swedish machinery is too selfish. It's extremely selfish and self-aware, and it only looks at the opportunities.
Well,
As
I hope your politicians represent you well in the decade to come, especially when it comes to budgeting in the EU. Don't get ridden for suckers, okay? If they try to put massive tariffs on you and your government, tell them no and just pay into NATO.
here's the things, we would profit from tariffs, but this is Sweden. Sweden is a well-developed country that could. We would profit on tariffs. If there's like penalized tariffs, we will simply just produce our own goods, and we have done so in the past. Um, um, okay, we have we could produce our own food. Whereas we could be self-sustaining with food, and we have iron. We have iron, and we have coal, and we have food, and
By the
uh,
way, what is Sweden's stance overall when it comes to nuclear energy production and energy efficiency and sufficiency? Overall, being energy sufficient as a nation is a considerable step for
the
Swedes.
right wing is generally pro. The right wing is generally speaking pro atomic power. And the Sweden Democrats and the new parties are basically pro-atomic party, and the left is pro coal power. They pretend that they are for the environment, but the opposition to the atomic plants is basically only an hidden agenda. It's the coal industry. It was the competition. It was a competition between coal power and atomic plants. There is nothing else to it, and the
Does
entire
Sweden
environment.
actually have many atomic plants?
We had four, and
That's
we
quite
are.
good for a nation the size of Sweden. It's very good.
Yeah. So we could just run along on that if we just kept all four atomic plants, we could just like not export so much, and we have electric cars. We are building an infrastructure where basically people are going to charge electric cars almost everywhere on every gas station, and the power from that is going to come from the atomic power, and on that we have basically solar panels on every villa, on every or second villa, like solar powers everywhere. So basically we don't need to. We could minimize energy import. We don't need oil. We don't need oil. And if we would need oil, we could use coal. Could use our coal, and we could just use electric cars, atomic power. Yeah. So we would survive. Okay. The only way we accept things as an import, I believe, is that the Swedish population is traditionally used to buying luxury products from other country, to import luxury products and products that we cannot or we don't want to do ourselves. That when we expect high quality, And in everything that we can produce locally, we want to produce locally. We want to eat. We love our own fish. This, generally speaking, the Swedish fish is tasting better. The Swedish cow is tasting better. The Swedish pig is tasting better. I tasted Danish food and it was piss. Okay, a Swedish sushi. Okay, if you buy sushi on Swedish salmon, and if you compare it to Danish sushi on Danish salmon, the Danish tastes like piss. It tastes like nothing because the animal hasn't have a healthy life. If the animal doesn't have a healthy life, the meat tastes like nothing. It just almost tastes like fucking water. And that is basically my opinion of European food in general. And traditionally speaking, we have had an agricultural economy, so food is essentially the only major local culture we have. So I think that Sweden in many ways can survive tariffs. We can survive tariffs, and if you have food, coal, atomic plants, and other investments. So and yeah, and we have iron. Then we could survive. We could survive on less. We could at least survive to pay for tariffs. I mean, if products are high, no, if the price for products are high, if it's costing more to import luxury products, then we could probably pay for that. Um, but generally speaking, the old parties are just old men, and they all want complete globalization. To summarize the situation, the old political parties that are traditional, they're full with old people, and they want complete internationalism. They want to import 24 million black people into Sweden, and build a completely new country. And they perceive everything else to be just a blank slate. They perceive Sweden like an American colony that is not developed, and they want Sweden to be a Manhattan or a huge Manhattan, like super American big cities everywhere, with a huge international economy, and they think this will solve everything, and they don't want any to create any sort of harmonious natural local economy. They want they want a huge trading hub. They don't want America in Scandinavia. They want Scandinavia to be America, where people from all countries, especially Muslims, and they do not want Chinese. Very interesting. They don't like Hindus. They don't because they don't like Hinduism. They don't like Hinduism. They don't like conservatives. The Indians, for example, they are conservative. They don't like Christians because they're too conservative. So they love Muslims. They love Muslims and they love Africans. They don't like migrants from more developed countries like China or Korea. Also, they want specifically only Muslims and only Muslims and blacks. And only, and then it is South Americans. They love people from Mexico, Chile, or so, but China, that's bad. Japan, the people from Japan is bad, um, because these politicians, they are disturbed by, they don't like They don't like real conservatives. They don't like that, for example, Hindus have family values. Okay, Hindus have a slightly more open view to sex, but they still have a very, they trust authorities. They trust in family values. One man, one woman. There's a difference between men and women and so on. And they don't like the Chinese because they feel threatened by the Chinese. They feel threatened by they don't like culture. They don't like the family values of the Chinese, and they don't like that the Chinese are snobbish. All are around the world. They don't want workforce migrants to Sweden who come from conservative, orderly countries that believe in order. Like there's on the internet there are many businessmen and Swedish businessmen and politicians who are horrified by, for example, the Japanese. They're horrified by them, completely horrified by them, and they're horrified by the Hindus. They are horrified by but because they are so extremely afraid of they are afraid of children. They're
Yeah,
afraid of
because
family
they
values.
share conservative values, essentially.
Yeah, and there's like politeness, expectation. Uh, some Swedish family went to Japan, and they were shocked that there were rules that they couldn't understand etiquette or that they should be polite, essentially, and they were horrified about everything about it, completely fucking horrified. Um, and it was a social democratic family and so on, and they perceive they admire Muslims because um, from the Cold War, um, essentially, the Swedish politicians they created very strong connections to Islamic groups in the Middle East during the Cold War, and they established very strong connections to communistic people in South America and poor communistic people in Africa. Um, essentially, because they are horrified by law and order. They don't understand the concept of culture, law and order, or religion, or family values, and they are horrified by it. And they have his they accept they love Muslims family values or Muslims religiousness or conservatism because they feel it is more like their socialistic intolerance. They essentially they like that Muslims are kind of Muslims are collectivists, very collectivist, and they have like they have a Puritan sense to them. They just okay, Muslims are dirty. They are poor. They all dress the same. They all dress the same, and they live humbly, and they are crowded in these filthy buildings and like packed as sardines. So the Swedish socialists they love this. But when Muslims,
Well, it's
well,
importing a voter base, isn't it? They get to essentially import the voter base that keeps them in power. So,
partially, but they are. It's much worse than that. Okay, yes, they are importing voting on base, and there's like Muslim priests. They go door to door to politicals and ask, "Hello, I have 5,000, 4,000 voters." They will vote for whatever the priest is telling them to. Are you interested? And if I sell you our votes, 5,000, 4,000, 8,000 votes, uh, could you give us like Muslim food in schools, or could you give us separate bathrooms? And could you give us like girls' school separation of girls and women? Could you give us a building permit for a mosque? Could you give us? Could you allow us to have our ISIS members as teachers and doctors so they can get jobs, etc. etc.